Hello Marvelites, it is I, Mr Sinister, here to talk about the aftermath of X-Men Apocalypse. Now like most Marvel films, this film had an extra scene in the end of the film, after the credits. Hang on guys, seriously, have you ever watched a Marvel movie at the cinemas, and when the credits start rolling, people just start to leave and you want to tell them so badly to stay, but you just sit there and call them idiots for leaving a Marvel movie before the after credit scene? Pfft, dumbass. And then there are those guys who leave after the mid-credit scene, think they're smart because they stayed back to watch one scene. Pfft, bro, there's one more. But anyway, in the after credit scene of X-Men Apocalypse, we see a very familiar place in the shape that resembles a place which experiments on a certain someone who rhymes with Wolverine. Anyway, this is the aftermath of what happened earlier in the movie, when Wolverine messes up everybody's things. The Rhino doesn't want me to swear, so you can replace those words with more suitable ones. Now after Wolverine messes up their things, he runs away into the Canadian wilderness. But in the after credit scene, we see a cleanup crew cleaning up the mess that Wolverine made. There were vacuums cleaning up the bullets, and people mopping up the blood. And then we saw people in formal, probably expensive clothing, with a briefcase in hand. They walked to the containment thingamabobbo, and took out a vial of blood titled Weapon X, which by the way is Wolverine, in case you've been living under a rock for the past 1, 2, 3, 4, 16? 16, jeez, this franchise is older than I am. Well, anyway, they then place the vial into one of the briefcases mentioned earlier, and in it, we see two more vials of something. One is light green and the other is empty, or white. But that's not the best part. After the men in black place the vial in the briefcase, they then, as you should, otherwise everything falls out, they close the briefcase, only for the screen to cut to a close-up shot of it closing, to see the company logo that they work for. Wayne Enterprises! Nah, but seriously, it's Essex Corp. Now you might be wondering, what does Essex Corp mean? I'll get to it, but first...
let me take a selfie.
Now let's break this scene down. There is a theory going around on the internet, which I'm sure you heard of, but if you haven't for whatever reason, you're on the internet right now, hopefully. Don't do illegal shiz, kids. The theory is that the vial of Wolverine's blood could very well become a clone of Wolverine. That clone obviously being Laura Kinney, aka X-23, who then became Wolverine recently in the comics, which could lead to her replacing Hugh Jackman's Wolverine. You know, we did a whole video on that, so go ahead and check that out right after this. Anyway, as for the other vials, who the hell knows? I mean, the green one could be Toad, I guess. I don't know. If you have a better theory, let me know down below. Now, about Essex Corp. Essex Corp is a clear reference to the reoccurring X-Men villain known as... the Essexinator. Nah, but seriously, it's a clear reference to the reoccurring X-Men villain, Mr. Sinister. In case you didn't know, Mr. Sinister's alter ego is Alexander. Sorry, that's me. Mr. Sinister's alter ego is Nathaniel Essex. Essex obviously being the name on the briefcase, unless you can't read, or you went to a movie blind. Why would you go to a movie blind? That's just stupid. And in my mind, this end credit scene makes a lot of sense. But you might be thinking, random comic book fan watching this video on this horrible channel, you know nothing. How on earth could this be Mr. Sinister? He is supposed to be an independent mutant scientist who doesn't interfere with things too often. Well, let's put it this way. Mr. Sinister is a mutant scientist. He's obsessed with genetics and biology. And what does that have to do with anything? Well, a lot. It has to do with everything. That's why he's a big X-Men villain, is because he's obsessed with mutants and genetics. And specifically Jean Grey and Scott Summers for some reason. But that's apart from the point. He's a scientist who studies and experiments with mutants. And these men go retrieve a vial of blood. Wolverine's blood to be exact. And has two more vials in the briefcase, which makes perfect sense. What would you want a blood sample for? Unless he's a vampire. My best guess is for scientific experiments and biology, for his company to work. But how does that make sense? How can Mr. Sinister run a, presumably, international multi-billion-dollar scientific company? Hey, that sounds familiar. But it's not comic accurate. No matter how comic accurate this movie has been so far, this is probably the least you must be saying, random comic book fan. And please, random comic book fan, shut up. But this end credit scene is more comic accurate than you may think. This may not be very comic accurate to the comics based on the 616 universe, but what about another universe? I'm specifically referring to comics such as the 1610 universe, aka the Ultimate Universe. You know, the home to this, and that. Many people don't know this universe all too much, and those who do aren't a big fan of it, and I'm sure most of you have no idea how Mr. Sinister fits into it. Well, in this universe, Nathaniel Essex, aka Mr. Sinister, which I said earlier in case you forgot somehow, that's the entire reason this video exists, because of the word Essex. Anyway, Nathaniel Essex never became Mr. Sinister thanks to Apocalypse. In this universe, he was a heavily tattooed bodybuilder, who had the word Sinister tattooed onto his arm, hence the name. And he was a scientist who specifically worked on stealth and mind-altering drugs, who may or may not have been working for a scientist. None other than Bruce Wayne! Nah, I'm kidding, it's Norman Osborn. So how interesting, Nathaniel Essex worked for Oscorp in the Ultimate Universe? That's actually pretty interesting. Then he experimented on himself, gained telepathy and invisibility, sort of, and almost killed himself and saw visions of Lord Apocalypse, but that's not what we care about. We care about the company he worked for, Oscorp. Now, Oscorp is an international multi-billion-dollar science-based company. Told you it sounded familiar. And in the 1610 universe, Mr. Sinister worked for Oscorp, so this could be more comic accurate than we thought. Looking at all the evidence in the after-credit scene and in the comics, both 616 and 1610 universe, Essex Corp could very well be Fox's Oscorp, which explains the retrieval of the blood of Wolverine and other samples. The Essex Corp could very well be the one to create X-23, and Mr. Sinister, well, probably his son, considering it's in the 80s, and then Wolverine 3 is based on Old Man Logan, so we might see an older version of Wolverine, therefore the son of the founder of Essex Corp, or it could be Essex's power, keeping him living longer. What was I talking about? Oh yeah, Mr. Sinister and or his son could be the villain for Wolverine, or maybe even Gambit, the Deadpool sequel, or the rumored X-Force film. Though likely Deadpool, as he appeared in the Deadpool game.
Surprise! Ha! Got the little language, didn't we?
And was somewhat responsible for the creation of Cable, but who knows. So, what are your thoughts on the after credit scene? Do you think Essex Corp is Fox's Oscorp? Do you think Mr. Sinister will appear in future movies? And if so, which one? Let us know down below. But before you do, before you do that, scroll back up, thank you. I want to show you something. So I asked Comics Me if I should open this thing. I asked why, because it has special collector's edition, an 8-inch posable figure with authentic fabrical costume, the thingamabobo. So I asked if I should open it. No one said no, so I did. Perfect. Awesome fabric. Undress it and everything. It's mine now. It's belts. Paint rubbed off. It's mine and it's perfect. I'm keeping it. I'm hugging it right now. I also got The Life and Death of Captain Marvel Part 2. I need Part 1. I'm not reading it until I get Part 1. Give me Part 1! I also got this. This is Deadpool and the Howling Commandos. Interesting team up. Mrs. Deadpool. I don't even know who that is. What is it? I thought that was Moon Knight at first. Anyway, if you dare freaking yell at me for using vertical, that's fine. You can do that. Anyway, if you enjoy Marvel-related content, feel free to subscribe to Marvelite HQ. You know, that horrible channel I mentioned earlier. We like to post weekly. Speaking of liking, if you liked this video, feel free to like this video, or dislike it. Dislike it, you DC fanboy. Or check out these other X-Men related videos that are on screen, or on the card/I button on the top right of the screen. It has been Mr. Sinister, talking about Mr. Sinister with a Mr. Sinister action figure, you jealous? And until next time, Mr. Sinister, out!
He's got a nice pair of smooth criminals down under.